Hi, good morning. Thank you for joining us. I'm really glad you could all make it for the call. And I'm Margot Borden, as you know, and I'd like to just start by explaining a little bit about integral psychology and how I came across it and why I chose integral psychology as the approach I use and in my practice. And then we can just have a discussion. I knew very early on in life that I wanted to be a helping professional. I had no idea in my early context what that would look like, psychiatrist, psychologist, etc. But as I discovered more spiritual ideologies in life at a very young age, I guess when I started to train as a therapist, I went toward more psycho-spiritual approaches. So I tried lots of different schools. I did training in various techniques of mostly humanistic psychology. And it seemed like no matter what I read and no matter how I approached it, there was always something that didn't quite fit. Like it provided one piece of the puzzle, but not the whole puzzle. Something was missing. And then in 2002, I was in Pondicherry, and I was having breakfast at the ashram guest house of Sri Aurobindo. And while I was having my second piece of toast, I looked at a newsletter that was just sitting on the table, and it started talking about integral psychology and the teachings of Sri Aurobindo. And as I was reading, I was becoming more and more excited because it just felt like it was an approach that fit not only my aspirations, my intuition, and my sort of my quest for universality. That there were no limitations. It addressed the full spectrum of consciousness, the full spectrum of human experience and potential. And I was very excited to find that. So I went out and got in a rickshaw and went out and met the author and sort of joined the integral psychology movement at that point. And it's really addressing human experience and human potential from a multidimensional approach, meaning that we're not just bodies with physical symptoms and physical aspects. We're not just emotions, we're not just an intellect, but we also have an inner self or a soul. And we can address all of these areas and angles and create an approach to psychology that invites us to become whole.
Margot, could you tell us what is integral psychology?
Yeah, sure. Basically, it's not really a technique, but it's each integral psychotherapist will use one or usually more than one technique and sort of blend them together based on their own mindset and what feels appropriate for them. So, for example, somebody might use a more gestalt or emotional dynamic, and somebody might use a more esoteric approach. But the ideal, really, the essence of integral psychology is that we address the full spectrum of human consciousness. And so, maybe sometimes I'll use a little cognitive work, and sometimes sometimes it'll look more like a guided meditation. So we take each person as a unique individual with their own nature and their own path and their own unique way of unfolding to their own inner truth and also working through the issues, the blockages, the barriers, the fears, the difficulties according to their own nature and also what they're seeking from the therapy. And then there can be various different approaches, as I said, cognitive or more emotional-based work, or sometimes we have to address physical issues or intellectual, like mindset things, or emotional wounding, and then also we can move on to the spiritual spectrum. So sometimes it can, a session can look like a guided meditation or even can sort of dabble into something that looks like shamanism. It just depends on the individual, the client, and also the therapist and their approaches. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, Mike, I'm clicking on you.
Hi. Yes, I'd like to ask you a question. So, what could I personally expect from integral psychology?
Okay. Well, what we would do is perhaps if you were seeking to address a particular issue, that there was some difficulty you were having or some potential that you were seeking to develop in your life. So first we would really look at what it is you're seeking. Also, when we're talking, when we're having an initial interview, I'll be looking at you and I'll be trying to get a sense of your nature and how you function and your worldview, and take that all into consideration, and then sort of come forward with a way of working that will be suitable to you and will be aligned to what it is you're seeking in the work. So you can basically expect resolution of problems. One of the things I really like to do in session, and I find it very useful and empowering, is I call it map making. And so we do in a sense, a deep exploration and a broad exploration of who you are and where you stand and what your issues are, and how they all fit together. So in a sense, you're drawing a picture of the whole of what's going on, and then you can start to navigate in a way and learn to navigate on your own and develop autonomy over time once you've done a certain amount of work. Does that answer your question? Yeah?
Yeah, pretty much. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Hi, Margot. I was wondering,
Hi.
how is integral psychotherapy different from other approaches, and how do you evaluate how many sessions a person would need?
Okay. Integral psychology, again, it's not a technique in itself. It's an ensemble of techniques according to each I would think that each integral therapist will have a set of techniques that they use that suits that they were trained in, that suits their worldview. And so one of the major differences is that it is eclectic. So we'll be using a series of techniques. So for example, if you have an issue that is we might find that it's useful to delve into what happened in your childhood or even in your ancestry. We might address some cognitive beliefs or what we call scripts, like ideas that you have in your head that are counterproductive or that are blocking you in your evolution. We might address physical issues that can be, like thyroid or hormonal issues that can create. So we'll address the full spectrum, okay, using a wide variety of techniques. And so that doesn't sound too unique because there's other approaches that are eclectic, like integrative psychotherapy. So one of the differences is that we're not just limited to the psychological spectrum, but we're going into the psycho-spiritual spectrum. So we'll address anything that's of a psychological nature, like your family history, your past, beliefs or thoughts that are limiting you in your evolution. But we're also going to address more spiritual issues. So for example, have we come upon a blockage? Have we identified a core blockage in your life? And is it personal, or is it karmic, or are there occult disturbances? So we'll address it from a full spectrum point of view. In integral psychology, one of the core beliefs is what's called a view of the structure of consciousness. Okay, and so we have a body with its needs and desires and impulses. We have emotions, we have an intellect, and we have a soul or an inner self. Okay, and in integral psychology, we address all of the levels of the spectrum. So the outer self, which is body, mind, and emotions, and the inner self, which is the soul. And really, we recognize the goal of and the highest potential of human life is to start to identify and listen to and align to the voice of the soul. And so rather than just focusing on the ego and on stopping there, we're going to be addressing the ego and smoothing it out so that we can more and more come home to the soul and live a life that is aligned to and lit up by your inner soul consciousness. So those are the two major things that I think differentiate between integral and also integral is whether we're using Ken Wilber's integral psychology, who's a Western integral psychologist, or Sri Aurobindo, who's the original person who came up with the idea of integral psychology. It's not really, we can't really say it's a psychology, but it's a meta-psychology. And so it's like a platform that recognizes all the schools and works with a wide variety of schools, and there's no one right way or right school or right therapist or right thinker. It's sort of more like a universal approach. It's a meta approach. Okay? So it's kind of a long answer to your question, but did that answer your question, or do you have something more specific you'd like to know?
Yeah, thanks, but I was wondering how many sessions you take.
Okay. So each person comes to therapy with maybe a goal or an issue or a set of issues, and I think according to their nature and their goals and vision, that's where we're going to set. So usually after the first session, I can get a sense of the person and how fluid their consciousness is, how they're able to be forthcoming, or whether they're more reserved, and then you can get a sense of, a general idea of how much time should be spent. Doing generally weekly sessions is really ideal. Okay. So I'd say a minimum of 3 months usually. Yeah. Thank you, Amrita.
So, Margot, I have a question.
Yes, Mike.
How do I choose an approach and a therapist?
Okay. Well, that's an interesting question. How to choose an approach? I guess you could explore various therapists that you become aware of and really look at, first of all, what they're explaining, their mindset, and does it suit your own? Does it feel right? Do you think that it would suit your needs and what you're looking for? And then I think the most important thing is to really know when you've had, let's say, call them up, have a little chat, and see how you feel. So I think it's really important to find somebody to work with where you feel safe, where you feel heard and understood. For example, if you have a deeply spiritual approach and you come across somebody who's maybe analytic or reductionistic, or then obviously you want to be aware if something feels safe and where you feel like there's room for you to be you and to grow into the direction you want to grow. And so you want to find a therapist who can work with you really on your level. Hi.
I have one more question.
Oh, yeah, great.
Yeah, if I go into the psycho-spiritual space, will I become a ghost?
Yes. So if you do become a ghost, because I work from a spiritual perspective, we could still do therapy with you. But I don't know how you'd pay for sessions. So yeah.
Your problem.
Margot, can I ask a question?
Hi, Barry. Yeah. Yeah.
Could you just explain a little how online therapy works?
Sure, yeah. So basically, obviously you've come across my website, or somehow you have all gotten in touch with me. You might also be aware of other people who work online. The way I work is I like to set up sessions that last 45 to 50 minutes, and normally it's good to meet, just like with any other therapies, you would meet on a weekly basis. And we might start by checking in and see how you're doing. Obviously, we'll have an initial intake interview and explore what your issues are and what's motivating you to come to therapy. And also, we're going to look at your worldview and your mindset so that I can really work with you on your level, you know, in a sense, in your language. And then we dive in, and sometimes it's going to be, again, it's going to be similar to working in person. There's going to be sometimes addressing cognitive issues, sometimes delving into the past, where the past is blocking us from, you know, being who we want to be today. And sometimes also we'll do more subtle things like guiding you into inner spaces and opening up and healing places or opening up blockages. So that I guess it's going to depend on what it is you're seeking and really on your mindset. I'll work with you on your level in your context. Yeah, but it's good to sort of envisage a few months at least, if not ongoing, according to your needs and what suits you. Yeah.
Good.
Mm-hmm.
So does can online psychotherapy work?
Yeah. Well, actually, no, it doesn't work, and you pay the money, and you know, I can work on the beach, and I'll just take a nap, and no. So I'm making it difficult for you. So online psychotherapy is increasingly popular, sometimes because we're all geographically mobile and we may not be able to have a week-to-week stable relationship with a therapist. Let's say you live in Los Angeles or Mumbai and you're constantly on the road, and so it enables you to establish a helping relationship with someone and to maintain some kind of regularity. It's also really suitable for some natures. Some people prefer not to go out and meet somebody. They like to be in the intimacy of their own home or office, so it can be convenient. But also, so what's been found in the research is that some people actually will divulge more and open up more and feel safer when they're in their own space and meeting online. And so it can be done in chat or also on a webcam, according to really what works for the person.
Margot, why do you draw on Western psychology and Eastern tradition in your integral psychotherapy?
Okay. In the Western world, what I find is we've been very good at looking outward. We've developed excellent and scientific understandings of various aspects of human nature, like insofar as behaviorism and cognitive work, and those are all very useful. But what was missing for me and what drove me to look into really the mystical teachings of the East is that kind of first of all, the identification of the soul in a, for me, in a more spiritual than religious way, and also a sense of the universality. So the teachings of the East have been given to us through great yogis or rishis who lived in ancient times, and so their view of human nature isn't limited to the cognitive self, to what we can reason, to what we can come to through rational thinking and analysis. It's mystical insight, mystical vision, and so there's a kind of in a way we could say it's defragmented and it's whole. It sees the whole spectrum of human consciousness. So we have the Western outer, which is practical and pragmatic and scientific, and then we have the inner Eastern, which sort of creates a universal whole, or a really holistic way of perceiving each individual, but also a theoretical approach to psychology. Thank you.
That was it.
Does anyone, before we finish up, does anybody have any more questions? Maybe we have a few more minutes here.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, Barry. Let me just click on you.
You make integral psychology sound very much like a unifying theory
Yeah.
of psychologies and spiritualities. What's the best part of what you do, or the best of all of those perhaps sub-theories and spiritualities that you like to go to? What's really you in there?
Okay. I think what my favorite part is, and my favorite thing about what I do, is really just sitting and being completely present with the person who I'm sitting with, and exploring intuitively, but also using the techniques. How can I hold the space for this person, and how can I? Where does it hurt? Where is it blocking? What can I do to sort of, in a way, I'm journeying alongside the person and with my clients. How can I help them unfold? How can I help them open up the barriers and really unfold to their essence, and to walk toward wholeness, walk toward well-being, walk toward self-acceptance, walk toward self-actualization, whether it be goals in the world or inner goals with oneself. Sort of, it's walking the path toward wholeness, and the various techniques. Sometimes it's techniques I'm trained in, and other times just something intuitively will come, and I'll work with people in various different ways. To, sometimes we need grounding, and other times we need to work on a childhood wound, and whatever it might be. But to really sit and walk alongside another person is just the most magic and wonderful, wonderful experience that I could possibly want in life.
Thanks.
Thank you, Barry. Nice question. Okay, so it's time to come to a close with the session. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I really enjoyed chatting with you. I hope you got your questions answered, and thank you for participating.